the recording and say, I should be recording this because Dara specifically reminded me to please record it. Okay. So we're just going to have a pretty mild agenda tonight. I think we're all stretched a little bit thin as the end of the 2024 comes upon us, so we don't need to do too much more. I will say that just despite the Google Calendar going a little crazy, we're sticking to this slide that I shared before, which is the dates we set at the beginning of the school year. So with apologies to Jen, because I know Tuesday, she says, is better than Wednesday. But unless everybody wants to shift to Tuesday, I think we should stick with these dates. Is that good? As scheduled? Okay. Often in these meetings, I want to share one resource. So you're like, geez, that meeting was a waste of time, but at least Tom shared one useful thing. So today's entry in that slot is something that I came upon that I'm kind of surprised I didn't know existed. Has anybody used this climate mapping for resilience and adaptation? No? So I'll show you an example of it. It's on the Esri's Living Atlas website, which is why I'm kind of like, how did I not know about this? And it is kind of accessible through the climate.gov website, which is a website that probably will not be live for very much longer, say like less than a month. So I'm trying to get some confirmation that this tool will still be on Living Atlas. I think it will be, but I don't know at what point it will be updated. But if you just put any address in there, like the Cal Screen tool I've shared before, it'll look up a city or a location and address and give you a projection about climate impacts. So it's like 5 categories: extreme heat, drought, wildfire, flooding, and coastal inundation. Those are the 5 categories of impacts that are being tracked according to climate change. I actually put in Hamilton City, so this is Blanca's information here. And so, like for extreme heat, it gives you a graph and shows you throughout recent history, this is how many days have had temperatures above 90 degrees. And these are the projections for the early, mid, and late century based on either a lower emissions or higher emissions kind of model for how our economy progresses. So this tool answers questions about what's climate change mean to us if we're not at a coastal location and we're not looking at sea level rise, or we're in a cold place and we maybe don't mind it being warmer, or we're in a hot place and we're not worried about getting more rain or something like this. So it goes through and it talks about like extreme heat, the duration of dry periods, like the number of consecutive dry days, how that is now and how it's projected to change in the future. The days per year with no precipitation at all. So you can see in some cases, like in Hamilton, the change is more in temperature, not so much in precipitation. That's not what the model projects. But then when you get to wildfire, that change in temperatures is going to affect wildfire risks. Flooding risks are going to go up, not necessarily because there's going to be more precipitation overall, but more frequent, intense rainfall that accumulates quickly and causes flooding. So anyway, this is a kind of a cool tool, and the idea is of this. If you see, it's climate mapping for resilience and adaptation, but actually what this map tells you is the risk profile. And then the website kind of takes you through some ideas for resilience and adaptation, depending on what the risks are that you're facing in your location. So it's just kind of an interesting tool to be able to look up localized projections of climate change impacts. Any questions about that, or it sounds like nobody's used that in the past?
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't wait to explore this more.
So the on the slides, the image just links
Exactly. I'm
directly
playing.
to the website. And then you can see once you get to the web page, it's got this climate resilience toolkits, steps to resilience. So that's what I was talking about. Like okay, so you've got these impacts. What are you going to do about it? So hopefully this is the kind of work that because the federal government did it and put it on a third-party platform, it might not get found and shut down the same way .gov website will. So we'll I'll try and interact with this website before next month's meeting and see if it's still functioning. That'll be somewhat interesting. Okay, so that was the sharing portion. Also, I just wanted to go back and review. The reason we didn't meet last month was because of the special webinar I organized, and I know some of you attended, and thank you for that. And some of you couldn't attend and maybe have reviewed the recording or materials, or maybe haven't. So I just wanted to remind you that the recording and the materials are available on the CGA website, and there's like a page of linked articles to reading, some discussion questions, and then some hints for using the North American Street Names database so that you and or your students can do some research into place names. And we talked about in the webinar a little bit the fact that you may or may not want to have students, conducting a search for offensive place names because that has your students focusing on offensive words. But there's also the possibility to look for patterns like in the use of names. Like during the webinar, we did or maybe it was our group, we did an example of kind of comparing different presidents and why. Oh, it was when I connected with Renee's students. That's right. I'm like, wait a minute, who was this audience? So Renee's students submitted a very healthy list of questions that needed answering. And so I connected with her students briefly and provided answers to their questions or encouragement for asking more questions in some cases. But also, I just wanted to kind of do some live interaction with them. And so we did some comparison of which presidents are most likely to have streets named after them and then comparing state by state and finding that like Washington might be more popular back east and Lincoln more popular out west, partially based on the time of when those states developed and when streets were being built in places like New York and Boston before there was President Lincoln in many cases. So okay, so that's just a reminder of why we didn't meet last week and what value. Did anybody do anything besides Renee that I know I talked to her students, but anybody else do anything with their students that was interesting or raised discussion?
I've talked to a lot of colleagues about it, not my students, but I've had lots of conversations with adults about it.
Cool. Yeah, I did too because it got me jazzed up about it. And so I have some non-education friends who are like, oh, they've reported back to me on some things they found. And also linked on that resource page is the historic topographic maps website that allows you to do some further research beyond just street names to place names to address some of the things that were talked about in the webinar of federal lands and physical geographic features that often are the places these offensive place names have been attached. So knowing about that in your area. So okay, enough said about that. Unless anybody has questions.
I just want to say I appreciate being connected with Derek because he was so open and awesome to meet with me about the project I'm working on. And he just zoomed with me and sent me a bunch of resources and I really appreciated it. So
Awesome. Well, thank you
yeah.
for sharing that happened. He was generally quite enthusiastic about my approach to him to request this. he and his colleague from Spain were both like really excited about the fact that this research was getting shared with an educational audience. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that, Jen, and for following up. I agree. He's a fantastic and very supportive and positive guy. Blanca, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to share. It kind of goes with this. I don't know if well, you guys don't live in the North State, but we just had one of our historical landmarks burned down. They're still trying to investigate what happened. But it was interesting because when that happened, the kids came back the next day talking about it. It was all over the news and all over social media. There's a lot of mixed feelings about it because the people that were honoring there were not good people. And so the kids came back and we had a really long discussion about why some of the kids felt the way they felt and why some of the kids were kind of like glad that the mansion had like burned down. And so it was really great, and it kind of ties into like the name changing stuff because they were really passionate about, sharing and debating why they felt this was a good thing and also why they felt it was a bad thing. And we're able to kind of walk away respecting what others had to say. And so I was really glad about that because normally we wouldn't have had that kind of discussion. I think, kids normally they'll hear something, they'll share it, and then they'll stop there. But it was a very in-depth conversation about how they felt and why they felt that way. And I think a lot of it kind of stems also towards all the Native perspective lessons that we've been doing. It's really opening them to view things in a very different way. So I thought that was really good, and it kind of ties into the session that when we looked at the offensive name place
Yeah.
names.
Yeah, and I mean, advocacy to get names changed was something that we emphasized during the webinar, but also just the discussion. And for students to realize that some of the names that become kind of part of the environment in their communities are attached to people that do have diverse backgrounds and influences, and that it's okay to talk about that and say that, that's not the value we have in our community. Something interesting that I came across, I went to Boston for the National Council for Social Studies conference, and as I do when I go any place I haven't been a lot, I tend to get involved in researching the place. Um, and I was interfacing with the people from the Leventhal Map and Education Center at the Boston Public Library. So I was looking at some of their tools, which they have to study historical geographies of Boston. Very cool. And so when you start looking at these maps of Boston in the 1880s, 1860s, like that period, you start recognizing that large swaths of the city were owned by just 4 or 5 families that owned a huge amount of real estate in Boston. And if you this is 1850s, 1860s, and you fast forward, these are all the huge, highly developed downtown tracks with high rises and convention centers and that kind of stuff. So these families got very wealthy off of their speculation in real estate. And so I went back and just did some Google searching on some of the names. And one of the interesting things that I learned pretty quickly was like almost every prominent name in Boston, all of these families that controlled the real estate and now have names associated with like the museums, the Copley family, these families that are very prominent in Boston, they were all loyalists. They were all opposed to the revolution. And in fact, most of them fled Boston for fear that they would have all of their property seized because that's what the constitutional government said it was going to do because Boston was a hotbed of loyalists. And in fact, most of these people were able to just kind of duck enforcement by leaving town, leaving their children and usually wives in charge of their business interests such that they wouldn't be seized. And then they came back to town once the revolution was settled and just went about investing and making lots of money and consolidated actually a lot of the wealth that they had been in advantageous positions because they had been loyalists, and that's how they got their start being wealthy. And then post-revolution, they come back and kind of control this, what we now think of as the home of the revolution, but it's actually all loyalist families. So those kinds of, you can actually kind of figure out who these people were that shaped your community, sometimes just by doing some research on the names that are attached to streets or to public places that nobody quite remembers who they are. So Daniel from Spain, his specialty, or one of the things he's supporting, is people trying to figure out all the names that go back to the Franco regime. And so a government that wanted to make over the history of Spain and kind of change its identity. And in many cases, the people who were violent supporters of Franco and did a lot of this stuff got rewarded by having places named after him. But now nobody really remembers who those people were. They weren't public figures, so people don't know that that's a legacy of the Franco regime, and they're trying to figure out who they are and get the names changed, just to set the record straight. Okay, all right, enough about offensive place names or place names in general. Another thing, I know we had submitted our proposals to the two conferences, and this doesn't involve everybody in terms of the presenting, but I wanted to do some groupthink in terms of what's maybe valuable to present at a conference. So this time we meet, I thought we'd talk a little bit about the STEAM Symposium. In both cases, we got one of two proposals accepted into the program, and the other one was waitlisted. Interesting how both conferences handled it the same way, but I think when the same lead presenter presents two proposals, maybe that's a likely conclusion. So in any case, our STEAM Symposium presentation, which comes up in February, so it'll come soon after the new year. The title that got accepted was Locating Relevance and Accelerating Learning at the Intersection of Computer Science and Geography. So I had to come up with a lot more language to make the submission, which I will now share with you, not in a way to enforce the content of the language, but just to let it wash over you and give you some ideas about what we might include in the presentation. You see the names of the people who will be delivering the presentation, so take note. Because we'll have shared responsibility for deciding. And basically, my idea is we've signed up for a 60-minute session. In order for it to be 60 minutes, we had to say it would be hands-on and interactive. So it's going to be hands-on and interactive. And I just want it to be as generally valuable and inspiring to the teachers who attend as possible. Very hard to know because it's going to be lots of different teachers, different grade levels, different subject areas. So we have to kind of aim for a general audience in that sense, but these are more science and computer science teachers than, less likely to be social studies and English types, just given the way STEAM is typically construed. So the description that'll appear in the program says, this session highlights opportunities for teachers across all grade levels and subjects to teach STEAM in a way that is more student empowering, relevant to careers and civic life, and culturally sustaining. By leveraging the intersection of geography and computer science, participants will learn techniques for developing computational thinking skills, and we'll see how geospatial technologies enable users to see and analyze the world around them through data and visualizations. This approach is aligned with the joint statement on the need for data science and data literacy in PK-12. So the idea here is like, hey, this is going to be the kind of hidden word that's not included is place. So the kind of place focus is more student-centered, I think, and kind of helps deliver relevance and meaningfulness and connect with civics and just lived experience. And then the other part is like this developing an understanding of what computational thinking skills are as opposed to computer science skills and geospatial technologies. So that's the hands-on part, I think, is we have to come up with a sense of maybe 2 or 3 sites, just like the one I just shared, where people could have an interactive experience of plugging in a place of interest to them, their home or their school, getting real world, legit data that they can use to inform their thinking about general issues. So, but that's not enough to get your thing submitted. You have to submit an outline and some learning objectives. And I'm not going to include all the language here because it's overlapping and boring. But in terms of the outline, I just had 3 pieces that I described. Establish the importance of updating our instructional strategies to more effectively cultivate geographic and computational thinking skills with reference to student equity and opportunities, college and career readiness, and priority educational goals in California. This is kind of something I explained in the opening session, and I kind of go back to over and over again about like we live in a world that is defined spatially, and that is awash in data. And if we want to help students be prepared to make decisions about their own life in that spatial context and using all of that data, that's why we're working at this intersection. So then the demo part, demonstrate how to access instructional resources and learning activities that sharpen data literacy and geographic thinking skills. Use geospatial technologies to immerse students in an information-rich learning context and can also enable them to more thoroughly investigate their own positionality within cultural, environmental, economic, or political contexts. And then third, just to make it really clear that there will be actual teachers talking about their experiences piloting geocomputational learning activities with students and their plans regarding integrating a geocomputational approach into their teaching strategies going forward. So within our presenting group, we've got some diversity of grade levels and subjects covered. So we will hopefully cover some or provide some points of connection for people in the audience that'll go, oh, okay, I also teach math, or I teach environmental science or whatever subject. What else is in here? There's the learning objectives. I don't think we need to read that also. And I think there was one more. No, that was it. So any immediate thoughts on what would make this an interesting session for people that are attending?
Do we want to have like so mine are going to be 5th graders accessing it, and they've been working on it a lot. They've been figuring out, they've tried different tools and stuff too. So they're getting better and more savvy. Would it help to have like quotes or any video of like a couple of my more, well-spoken students talking about the challenges or what's good about it? Or is that not really room for that?
I think there could be room. I think it's helpful for teachers to see examples of how it played out in a classroom with real students. So I think I'm looking to you guys as more.
Yeah, because I can do final products too for the kids too, because they're almost there with their Blood on the River one. So
in terms of preparing the workshop content, one of the easiest ways to just format it would be to divide up the 60 minutes among the speakers and be like, I'll do the framing, and then each person could share some examples, and kind of people could do the second and third bullet. Does that make sense, or would you rather, do people think we should do a more coordinated, integrated approach, or should each person just get some time to share?
Maybe if we had some kind of form where if we talked about things we could share, so that way if Renee's doing, her sharing of the novel, then I won't share my novel. I'll share my salmon one instead. So that way I know we're not like doubling up on content.
Okay.
Maybe.
Cool. That's a great point. If we're going to divide up our time, we need to be transparent so that we don't find out during the presentation that we're overlapping a lot with somebody that we didn't mean to overlap.
And what is everybody's grades? Because I think, am I the lowest at 5th?
Nicole is 6. Jen.
Okay.
I'm kind of targeting, right now I'm working with GATE, which is 4th through 8th grade. So kind of middle schooly, but it could go to lower level GATE students, if that makes sense.
It does. Yes.
Another thought that kind of came to my mind too is that I think it would be good if teachers could or whoever comes to this comes away with something tangible. So I don't know if that means developing a page of resources for them or having them walk through a brief activity or a portion of an activity or something like that to keep them engaged might be helpful too. But that being said, I know an hour goes by really quickly. So I need to simmer on that one.
Yeah, agreed. And I should have said that I will reach out to the presenter group to coordinate our plan after the new year. Just so this is a chance to just hear from the broader group because I know not everybody who would necessarily want to attend could. Um, but okay, that's I think what you just said, Jen, is exactly in line with what I was thinking. And in general, as an outcome of this project, I want us to be able to point to some top quality resources. And even if they're not full-blown lesson plans, they're just instructional resources or websites where students can access data and geographic perspectives. And so, yeah, I absolutely believe that that's something we need to include as a takeaway page and maybe a link to a page on the CGA website that's got a list of resources. And so even things that we might not have time to present, but we can just put on there on a list and make people aware of.
Or even like I have my thing broken down. I've got the slideshow, but also I have it on a doc broken down kind of in the steps for when I was teaching it. So I mean, if we could give him even that, like, here's how you can do it in your class.
Okay. So having gone over these this outline, these three steps in the outline, hopefully this gives everybody in the presenter group enough to kind of think about what you would share or what you would have to share to around these instructional resources and learning activities that you might recommend and feedback on your experiences. So it sounds like Renee was thinking along those lines. Nicole referenced options. So when we meet in January, and I'll find a time for us to all meet, then we can just kind of lay out those ideas and see if there is any overlap or any way to kind of weave a common line. But I think it's okay for each teacher to share some specific some experiences that are unique to their students, their teaching situation, and it not have to be directly connected to the person who speaks right before or after them. I can do that connection point in the beginning with that kind of maybe if I take the first 7 or 8 minutes with that framing for number one, and then leave the rest of the time for teachers to share their experiences. And if needed, to make it interactive, I can bring back in some of the tools that I've developed either around the atlas or the Virus screen or something like that, or census data. Okay. All right, so we'll talk about the CCSS presentation next time when we meet, probably in January, or yeah, probably in January. And so the only difference really will be the ways in which the prospective audience might connect to the content. What we have to share is basically the same, but this we're thinking this is a more science-minded makerspace type audience, and the other one will be maybe a more literature-based traditional social studies type instructor. Not that there won't be interest in digital tools and the things we have to share, but just different group of people. Okay, any other comments or discussion about the STEAM symposium? Okay, moving on. Okay, so then another thing that we talked about last time we met on our regular meeting was that we need to work on kind of tracking information about what we're doing. So obviously in the presentation at a conference, we're going to be sharing a verbal story, but also in terms of me being able to report out the impact of this grant that's paying for this community to convene. we discussed using a Google form. Lara earns a big gold star by being the first person to submit and doing a very thorough job of responding to the form and sharing resources around a learning activity that she did, which really does live up to the learning activity in the sense of being pretty much a lesson. But remember that our idea of a learning activity, it could be something that you did as a warm up on a day or a standalone activity. It doesn't have to be a fully developed lesson. So don't feel like, you shouldn't report something till it rises to that level. But as I mentioned when we committed to this, I said, well, let's make sure we leave time in meetings where people can go, oh, actually, I do have something that I could report now, something that happened, which doesn't mean you have to at this point in the school year. We're not even at the halfway point. But if you did do something that rises to that level of a teaching activity that exposed your students to some element of geocomputation, that's what we want to hear about on the Google form. So that's a live link, and I'm going to pause here while we have a discussion so that it gives you time to pull up that form. Maybe I should pull it up just to make sure everybody knows the questions that we agreed would be on it. It's essentially just a lot of information that is very general. So your email and the grade level and course name that this activity applied to, the unit and lesson. If it's just say not part of a unit. If it's not part of a unit, that's okay. Some sense of date. It's not crucial. This is not scientific research, so I won't be measuring the timing in any way. But then what I would like to know is like the number of students involved. Like, was this an activity that was 20 minutes one day, or was it 20 minutes once a week for a bunch of weeks, or was it a week-long unit that students spent, 5 hours working on? Just some kind of sense of the duration of the activity. And then some open-ended questions. What did students specifically do to develop or practice computational and or geographic thinking skills? Any resources that they used, and how would you assess the value of the activity? And then another question on that, just basically saying, is this something you do, you'd refine and redo, or that you probably wouldn't repeat, you'd rethink and come up with something else? So hopefully that's easy to complete. And we can capture information. I don't want to set an expectation for how many times an individual person would fill out this form other than a whole number more than 0.
Do you want things like, so you said warm-ups, but like small things? So like we watched a Will I Am video on Esri, and then we did, our AEI strategies and, reflected on it. So, things like that are small, simple things.
Absolutely, because that might be where they see some. First of all, they're getting introduced to some vocabulary there. They're seeing, if it's the video, I think it's students participating in some local inquiry using geospatial tools. So yeah, absolutely. That's what I mean by encouraging you not to think about not to dismiss anything because it's too small or it wasn't a full assignment. That sounds perfect. And that's an exact type of thing that's easy to share with other folks about how, oh, hey, if it is an activity that requires less time or less planning on a teacher's part, that's something that another teacher can more easily adopt. So I think one of the major outcomes from my point of view for this project is to leave some breadcrumb trails for other teachers about what are our good ideas for exposing students to geocomputation concepts and getting them the chance to get interested. I don't want to say getting them interested because maybe they're not interested and that's okay. But you're not interested in anything you don't know about yet. And so what we want is to make sure students know something about it so they have a chance to get interested. So so the Google form is one way to tell this story. The other thing is sharing resources or materials that you think other teachers would find useful. So, for example, Nicole did this by loading up some slide sets that she had developed that other teachers could use to do instruction using the geo inquiries or to get students started doing story maps. So if you, when you're doing the form and reporting an activity, if there's a resource or material you want to share, you can just describe it or add a link in there. But also feel free to just put something in an email to me or upload it into our shared folder. Because, you know, when it comes February 7th, we're going to have to come up with this list of resources to share with folks at the STEAM symposium. And the more you can help us do our homework, the more we'll appreciate you.
Do you think it would be possible to do, so like Renee was talking about having student examples, maybe a folder of student example projects, like, you know, our best ones of some things so that we can see not just the teacher and the student to-do list, but like an example, because it's nice to have those once they've been built for kids.
It's super nice. I think it's especially if you can have multiple examples, that's really helpful for students. Sometimes one example is problematic because then they all go, oh, I'm supposed to replicate that. And so it doesn't become a sample, it becomes like the prototype. But if you have multiple samples, then that helps for students to see the variety of things that students were doing. So I personally love that idea. I don't know what other teachers think about the value of that. But given my usual work in doing kind of professional learning and curriculum resource development with teachers, I love to see what happens when students actually engage with some of that material and activity. So for my own personal selfish reasons, I very much would love to see student examples. And I do think for the presentation, like Renee was mentioning, you know, a description of how you approached an activity and then sharing out some examples of what student work looked like or how students responded is super helpful. Hi, Yuko, you came perfect in time to fill out the Google form with your learning activities. No pressure. Okay, it's just a reminder to fill out the form when you do something before it gets too far in your memory and you don't remember exactly what it was. So if you do any kind of activity to bring geocomputation in the classroom, which I expect people have done in some small ways already, please think to share that and share the materials. I also I put on here plans for 2025 because this conversation and you're maybe going, maybe there was something I have to report, or maybe you don't have something, but now you can start kind of putting a pin in the things you're expecting to do between now and the end of the school year that would eventually get reported in here, and just kind of put it on your to-do list of after you use that activity to allocate 10 minutes to take some notes about it. And then I will repeat this exact conversation at each one of our meetings between now and the end of the spring time. So that'll be a prompt for you to fill out the form right then. Okay, any questions? Yuka, do you want to tell us how bright your holiday lights are shining? That was our warm-up question. She doesn't.
Sorry, I'm laughing. My holiday lights in my classroom right now are in a tangled bunch that haven't been plugged in yet or set up. So they're not going, and it's gonna, yeah, they need, and then there's none on my house because I am afraid of heights. So there we go.
Okay, the tangled ball of not plugged in lights did sound like a metaphorical answer, by the way. Okay, so we talked about tracking our impact, and So that's something we've previously committed to. Also, I just wanted to raise the topic of making more impact because there's a couple things that I could also use your help with if you see an opportunity that makes sense for you. I'm not transferring new work assignments to you, but we've had some good fortune in that the funds that the California Subject Matter Project had for computer science integration that paid for our project, they had extra money. And I, of course, being one to not pass up extra money, said we could certainly use extra money. And they said, okay. So I have funds that would allow for me to travel to go organize 1 to 2 in-person workshops to engage more teachers. So if you think that you have ideas about a host site for a workshop like that, or an audience that might be interested in hearing more about geocomputation, we have an opportunity between now and the summertime to organize a workshop and have the cost covered by the grant. So if you are in touch with folks at your district or through an organization, think that you have an idea about how we could reach out to folks, we could tailor a presentation around geocomputation for a particular course content, or we could, kind of do a general presentation the way we're doing for the conferences. I wanted to put that out there and offer you the opportunity to connect your district or another organization with that resource that needs to be used. Um, so any immediate thoughts or ideas on that?
I mean, Humboldt County Office of Ed is always open to things like that, and I'd be happy to reach out to folks over there. I also noticed that I've been doing a lot of work with Kern County lately, and through the California Educators Together lesson design stuff. And Kern County seems to be offering quite a bit, and they seem to be a pretty uh I don't know, lack of better words, happening organization over there. So they might be another thought too.
Have you worked with or come across Amy Frame at Kern County?
No, I've been mostly working with somebody by the name of Sherry Dees.
Okay. I think Amy Frame might have just taken a job with Kern County, and she used to work with California Environmental Literacy Initiative, so I know her from there. Humboldt County makes a lot of sense based on our prior kind of involvement. So, and it's something we've brought up before. I am totally game for that. And Jen, do you want to initiate a conversation with somebody? I have previously reached out to Colby based on his connection to CJEP, and my sense is I'm not getting on his radar screen. Like I just, it's like, yeah, we could do something sometime. It's not okay, let's make a plan.
Colby is definitely literally a jet setter because he's
So,
trying to develop programs all over the world. But I mean, I know the folks over there pretty well, and I'd be happy to start putting a bug in some ears. And it would be kind of neat to open it up. I'm wondering if they'd be open to this too, but open it up to other school districts, like almost be like a Northern California hub for that, similarly to that's why Kern County popped into my mind is it seems like Kern County is working with a lot of different school districts and a lot of the region. It's more of a regional thing, more
right,
a localized thing. So I'm wondering if we could do
interesting.
something like that at Humboldt and just do like a Northern California and then offer a Central or Southern California workshop.
Okay. And also, and her name's blanking from my mind right now, Maggie, who's doing the Indigenous model curriculum.
Yeah, Maggie Peters.
Peters. I was gonna say Powers, and I'm just like, that's not right. But she and I have had some conversations. It would be kind of interesting to maybe collaborate with her and get something about indigenous ways of knowing and geospatial tools to access information about land. she's a pretty thoughtful geographer, really. So I think that's a big point of connection, like for geospatial technology, is to give us more access to knowledge about land. We can talk a lot about indigenous ways of knowing, but that's not the way most people are set up to gather information about the land they live on. And so I think we can honor a commitment to land and responsibility to land in a different way using geospatial tools, but in a way that's consistent with the values of stewardship.
Yeah.
So okay, well let's pursue that. And if anybody has additional ideas, please speak up and we'll get irons in the fire. I had a conversation with a school superintendent in Tuolumne County, a very small school district, and I was working with them to get a district-wide training, and then they just said we really just want it over Zoom. So so now it's all going to get done, but it will cost no money. So that means that we still have funds for 1 to 2 person, 1 to 2 days of in-person training. Okay, and then another thing that I think I mentioned to you guys in the past, that just if this is something anybody has an interest in, I wanted to share this opportunity. When I did the offensive place names webinar for Geography Awareness Week, I was also initially trying to organize another workshop for webinar for the same week, and it just turned out to be harder to get commitments from people, and I decided it was crazy to try and do it the same week. But the schoolyard tree canopy equity study I had shared with you guys about, I still want to do learn and do type of webinar the same way we did with the place names workshop, where you learn about the issue, but then you also break it down to how it relates to your community, and you can go out and do some activities. So the schoolyard tree canopy equity study, which is still linked from this slide, took every school ground in California and assessed the amount of tree canopy there was, basically documenting the fact that California schools are heat islands unto themselves, and they're designed to essentially absorb heat and have no shade. And where they do have shade is usually on the street perimeter and on the parking lot and not in student areas. This illustration right here is very typical of what I see in schools, of a lot of hardscape in between buildings to facilitate maximum usable area, and probably also facilitate easy cleanup. Like you could just blow a leaf blower across this thing in 30 seconds and have everything all at one side. So what I would like is for students to get this information, understand that schools and vegetation are not mutually compatible ideas in most cases, and start having a conversation about what it would look like to introduce more vegetation canopy to the school grounds to make it more heat and climate resilient. So, like in San Diego here, and you can look up on in your area, all of the red diamonds are the schools that they've designated as schools with the highest need. So that's a very vulnerable population based on socio-demographic characteristics, and then a very low percent of tree canopy, usually 2 or 3%. You can see the red dots are 0 to 5. So these schools that get the diamond are at least in that 0 to 5 category, and then with exacerbating characteristics in the school population. So I would love to have these schools that are in this high need area have a student-led effort to analyze the situation and make suggestions about how to introduce trees, and then ask the school district to do that, or ask a partner to come in and contribute to the school environment. There's a lot of funds right now for campus greening, schoolyard forests to plant trees. So I don't necessarily, this may be getting too specific, but if you've dug into this issue very much, you'll find that a lot of people get really enthusiastic about having people plant trees, but trees that people plant don't live. it's like, I mean, it's kind of like, oh, let's go all have, get a bunch of kittens and then not make a commitment and they won't get well cared for. So in like these schoolyard forestry circles, one of the things they say is like a good way to kill a tree is to have a volunteer plant it. So I don't necessarily want the outcome to be a bunch of people getting students planting one or two trees. Sounds like a great idea, but I think it's not as sensible as having students present to the school board or to school leadership about this is what we'd like to see, and have some professional landscape architects or planners or arborists actually apply the solution. But if anybody was interested in partnering with me on organizing that webinar and being a kind of teacher co-host partner, this is something I'm definitely planning for the spring. And then it will be nicer weather and students can go out and can collect some data, can identify the tree species in their area, can learn about the impact of shading on ambient temperature. It's much more complicated than I understood. I will tell you, as a person with a PhD in geography, I was like, oh, I didn't know that's how it worked. It's the effect of shading is like multiplied in a way that I can't easily explain, but the heat czar for the city of Phoenix taught me about the formula for calculating the impact of shading. So it's even a 5 or 10% tree canopy addition on a school campus could make a substantial improvement to the experience of heat on that campus. Okay, so that's something that we can do. That it will be an outgrowth of this project, this computer science plus geography project. So if anybody has a passion for that topic and wants to get involved, let me know. I do know one person who's not here tonight has a redwood forest on her school grounds that her students care about. So they might be a candidate to talk about taking care of the trees you have and adding to that. Okay. I think that's all I really had planned. I had allocated all this time for you guys to fill out the Google form, and then Blanca, what's your Friday called? It's a Bolt Day.
Yes, it is a bolt day. We get out at 12:30 and we can bolt.
So instead of having to hang around on the Friday like usual for
Yes.
staff meetings and professional or PLC time, it's Bolt Day. You get to go. So this being our December, fellowship meeting, I suppose this extra half hour can be Bolt Day time. Or you could, if you've got something to fill out in the form, you could fill it out. Otherwise, January 8th, second Wednesday of the month, that's our next meeting time. I believe I deleted the mistakenly populated Tuesday meetings into the future, so those should be gone from your calendar, but just check and make sure that you've got January 8th, and that will be our next meeting. So happy holidays to everybody. I hope you have plenty of time to relax and to connect with loved ones and your comfy spots in your house and things like that. And that you come back energized for 2025 to be a great year. Despite all of the things that could happen in the year, we can do what's in our power to make it a good year.
And we will.
We will, yes.
Hey, not just can, Tom. We got
That's
this.
right. We'll do it. We'll push
We're
it through.
forced to be reckoned with.
That's right. Well, thank you guys so much for being part of this group this year, and I look forward to more learning and more sharing next year.
Well, thank you for what you brought into my classroom. It's been fun. The kids are loving it. So thank you, Tom.
Cool. Note to other people, all you got to do is just make a specific request, and I'll zoom into your classroom.
Oh God, they loved it. Yeah.
Whatever kids, on whatever topic you want to talk about.
He'd prefer kindergartners, I think.
No, I'm so confused by them.
Agreed, except for when they're your biological, I don't get them.
I mean, they're cute and all, but I don't know what to say to them. I really don't.
Oh, now I want to see the interaction, Tom.
Yeah, I don't moderate the language at all. I say the same things I would say to adults.
Oh, that's sad. That doesn't work well.
Well, I mean, not like bad words or anything, just
No, but
complicated
even there, yeah.
concepts. You know, it's tough.
Just multisyllabic is the problem.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well,
All right.
take care. See you soon.
I can go watch Gremlins with the family. All right.
Go do it. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, Tom, before you
Yes.
go, can I ask you some questions? Because I'm late to the party and I
Yes,
apologize for
please
that.
do. No worries.
The first one had to do with the meeting in February. I got a couple emails like it was saying, "Oh, we accepted your thing. Oh no, we didn't. Now you're waitlisted, and now we're accepted again." Is that true?
So I should have probably communicated with everybody. It's because we had two proposals. So we had two different answers. One was accepted, one was waitlisted. So we're a go on the accepted. They did say that they would make a final decision on waitlisted ones by December 20th. So it's possible we'll find out we're giving two presentations, but we're for sure giving one. And so yeah, I did not realize that the Steam Symposium system would generate those emails to all of the co-presenters. I mean, it was great that we got all the co-presenters entered, which we didn't for CCSS. But then you all got those emails, which I think particularly the waitlisting one was confusing, and then being like, well, now you need to register, and we were already in that process.
Okay, so I don't need to do anything, I think was my question.
No, you don't need to do anything with Steam Symposium. I responded to let them know we were excited to participate and we'd received the message. And as far as I know, everybody on our team has communicated with Juliana, who's doing the travel arrangements, so that's all set. The only person that's still outstanding is Laura, who I was hoping would be here tonight but wasn't, and so I need to connect with her and find out if she still is able to participate. I realized when Juliana and Stephanie said they hadn't heard from her that I went back and she wasn't at our October meeting. So then I was like, oh, okay, I haven't heard from her in 2.5 months, so hopefully everything's okay.
Okay. The other, so this is a more embarrassing question because it's very basic, but so I'm working in ArcGIS. I had the students do Nicole's project, which was our initial small project, which is, what places would you like to travel to?
Okay.
I had them make, story maps about that. I cannot access their stories. I'm telling them to publish them, and I'm in ArcGIS, and I thought, oh, it should be published to the group or published publicly. And then when I looked at one of the students, like today, I had them share with me, like what is it on your end? And she couldn't make her story map. She couldn't change the toggle from private to public or anything else. And I didn't set it up. I know Nicole sets up her students in a class. I didn't do that because the people who run the district are finicky. They want to do it. So they did it. I was kind of grateful for that, but I don't know how to access my students' work. I was like, wait, what? And, I keep on looking through, seeing if there's a different setting I'm missing or something.
So the student's able to log in and get to their project, but not to change the setting.
Not to change the setting, yes, from private to public.
Okay.
And they're able to publish it. But that's as far as I've gotten.
So, but when you say publish it, typically publish involves it becoming public.
Yeah.
And so
you would think.
I'm not the most experienced problem solver in this area either, but my immediate thought is when each student gets set up with their
Mhm.
login gets set to a functionality level.
Mhm.
One is author, one is publisher, and one is essentially just like viewer. These are probably
Mhm.
not the accurate. I'm probably using Google sharing terms, not
Okay, it's
ArcGIS, but they're basically like that. So one possibility is that the kids have not been set. Their logins don't have publisher rights. Typically, it's actually one is creator and then one is maybe publisher. And either
okay.
one of those is supposed to give them the ability to share the product publicly.
Okay.
You could see how in some business settings you might not want every single person to have the ability to share publicly. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
work on that, and then you submit it to your supervisor, and they fine tune it, and then they decide. Um, but
Mhm.
but you do want your students to have that ability just so that you can view, right?
Yeah.
Because
Their
typically
products.
that's what they do is they would work on it, set it to publish, and then provide you the URL, and then you could see their work and assess it.
Right.
So, so that's my first thought is it's on the user setting.
Okay.
Um, and then I don't really have another idea about what would cause that. So the student can make the story map appear, but only in edit mode is what I'm thinking.
Hmm.
Because like if I go into my account and I've got
Mhm.
a story map and I'm logged in, I can view that story map before it's published. So while that student's logged in, they should be able to show you the story map whether or not it's actively published. But the question about whether it's published is, can you go to a different computer not logged in as the student and view the story map? And it sounds like no.
Yeah, no. Not as far as I know. Yeah.
So then I think it is on the user setting. Maybe they put all of the students at the lowest level, which does not
Mhm.
give them the ability to publish outside.
Okay.
And that's what you need. I think that's gonna
So I
um,
have to contact my people and see if they can change it or at least explain to me a way that I can access their work. And my guess is that they won't know either. So, because I'm the first person to introduce this, software to the district, period. I'm the only person who's
um,
using it. So,
let me see if I can give you an example of what it's gonna look like,
okay.
just in case you get the opportunity to like the person says, well, let me pull it up. So let's see. When I log into my California Geographic Alliance account, I get this page.
Mm-hmm.
There are different kinds of home pages that can be set up, so it may or may not look like this, but there should be these um, tabs. So
Mm-hmm.
you should be able to go from overview to members,
Mm-hmm.
and then this is everybody who's got a unique login on our account. And so
Mm-hmm.
see this user type. This
Yeah.
is what I'm talking about, the user type and the role. So the user and viewer, I believe, are not able to share. It's publisher that's required. So you can see everybody I've signed up with is either got publisher or some other designation.
Okay.
So it's this role. It's actually, so there's user type and there's role, and the role is the one that I think really matters. In
Okay.
fact, I don't think I assigned these user types like I didn't know professional plus was category.
Okay. Yeah, it's weird because I have a number and I tried to change my own number to a name, just have my name there instead of a number, and it wouldn't stick either. So I'm wondering if they don't have me as having full access to everything either.
Right. So for example, like here, I'm listed as an administrator.
Yeah.
So I have the ability to go in and change other people's accounts. I believe you can have 3 administrators on the account, so that maybe is,
The limiting factor, because I
yeah.
think I
And
saw
what I was
3.
going to say is if you could get the person to make one change for you, that's probably the most crucial, is if they could get you to administrator, then you would have the ability to go in and change the levels and I mean the user type and the role for the individual people.
Okay.
Do
That
you
makes sense.
have you seen this when you log in, do you see a list of members?
I see a list of numbers. Yeah, I do. I
Oh,
see a list
okay.
of like all of my students are listed as numbers, and then I see 3 names of the tech people
Okay.
who um, are admin, I think.
Okay. So
And so,
maybe if
and
they're taking up the 3 admin roles, then they're gonna have to be the ones to make the changes for you.
yeah, because it's
I'm
problematic. I'm like, why can't I see my student work?
right. And I do know some people who just like all of the accounts are numbers and they just assign those to a student. And
Hmm.
that way they're not personalizing it. And so, I mean, I could see different ways IT people might use to kind of make the accounts recyclable so that each year
Mm,
you just hand out the same accounts to new students. The
got it.
challenge is all of the saved work. In that case, the students would inherit the projects from the prior students. So somebody would have to go in and delete the projects,
Mm,
or they're kind of giving students a shortcut, if
okay.
they do it. Our
Mhm.
our account has 1,500 logins possible. Yours probably does as well. So, that might fit into different strategies for how to manage student accounts.
Okay.
The best thing that I've seen, which I know nothing about, but teachers who have Google school sites have said, or some other like single sign-on, have said that their IT people have been able to integrate so that this is included when they sign in. They use the one and the same password that
Hmm.
they would use for other things, which seems to solve a problem. Um,
Yeah, there was no issue. They made it a little symbol in their launchpad. So, and students just got in, and I don't think they had to do anything. Maybe they logged in as Google. I don't even know,
okay,
to
so
be
that's
honest with
great. Then students didn't, that's a big issue. If students don't have to navigate a password,
you.
taking
Yeah,
in a
they
super
didn't.
long password is better. So then
Yeah, no.
maybe just see if they can adjust the users to make sure that each individual login has the publisher role
Okay.
and explain that they need that so that you can see the work that they do.
Okay. Um, I I think you've answered my question for now, and I will make the next steps. Um, Going back to the conference, what do I need to have ready for you to present or to discuss? Like we're talking about what we're doing in our classrooms, correct?
Yeah, so I'm gonna send out like a when to meet for January to see if I can find a time that the group that's presenting can meet, maybe just for an hour. Before
Hmm.
then, if you could just think about like what you would want to share about how you're integrating what you're learning from this fellowship into your teaching. It could be an example of a specific teaching activity or a strategy you're using to revise an existing lesson or unit, or even just how you're thinking about integrating this into your teaching going forward.
Okay.
Just realizing that if we're it sounds like we're leaning towards using that strategy. So the main challenge is like what can you say in like 8 or 10 minutes?
Oh my gosh.
I know it's not much, right? So
It takes me longer to say my name.
I'm with you on that. It's very hard. And then I'm like, it's what's really hard is to be in the middle because I can either be super brief or I can be very long.
Uh-huh.
to figure out just how much can fit. So I I'm open to other ways to dividing up our time in the presentation, but with us having limited time together, I think that's probably the easiest way to just kind of to make it a relay race where we each contribute 8 or 10 minutes to the overall contribution. But for example, like Renee was saying, maybe that means that what you present is a summary of some information and we give teachers links. Like if you have a lesson plan you're sharing or examples of student work and you give, 1 or 2 minute description of it, but also give teachers a link to access more information. So
Okay.
just know that we'll have not only the 60 minutes of speaking time, but we'll also be able to leave the participants some kind of resource guide that they can use to pick through later on their own time and hopefully get more value out of what they shared. So that might ease the process or complicate the process, however, maybe of thinking about what you would share in that 10-minute time. But since we have, how many presenters do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not including me. But if Laura does not, if we don't hear from Laura, then it'd be 6 including me. But so
Okay.
that's 10 minutes per person.
Rad.
So, maybe when it comes down to it, not everybody will want their 10 minutes and we can, when we meet in January, maybe we can reallocate some time. But that's the reality of it.
Okay.
60 minutes.
60 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow. That's actually a really long time.
It's a
Oy.
long time, and then it's also like it's always funny to me when you think it's a long time to listen, a short time to talk. That's how I feel
Yeah.
about it. Like once I get talking, 60 minutes goes by really quickly. But if I'm the listener, oh, you better have something good to keep attention for 60 minutes. So that's, I think, in one way, that works on our side. We have so many speakers that there'll be lots of changes of pace and kind of transitions happening, which maybe keeps people engaged. But also, if we want to make it interactive,
Yeah, that's
how do we make time for that also?
because I just went to a science teachers conference. I don't remember the name of it, but they had a whole segment that was completely interactive, and they just basically had us going for 45 minutes, and it was fun, and it was something that each of us could recreate in a classroom. And sometimes, I mean, if we're doing this with teachers, like they usually want basically a do now, like you're going to take this home and you can do it tomorrow,
Right.
in your classroom. And that's what I'm looking for when I go to things like that. And I don't really know if they really want to hear 6 different people talking about what they're doing in their classrooms unless there's very good, strong nuggets that they could be like, okay, I could take that and do that tomorrow. I can take that. I can do that tomorrow.
Exactly. So I actually think that's what I think is maybe our challenge is for each person to do a mini version of like, what I have for you is this. And the reason you'd want to use it is this, and here's what it looks like, and here's what it entails. And then given that our audience is diverse and also our presenters are diverse, maybe out of the 6 people, each teacher hears 2 or 3 things that they think are really pertinent to them or especially pertinent. And so they're not all overwhelmed by like, wow, they just threw 6 things at me.
Yeah.
They're like, well,
Yeah.
they threw 6 things at me, but there's 2 I'd really like to investigate or I will bring into the classroom.
Yeah.
So that I think is a great way of thinking it. Is it possible within a 10-minute time period to give people a preview of something that they could choose to use in their own classroom with very little prep on their part?
Yeah.
Mull that over.
I'm mulling. Okay, Tom, I've
It's
talked
a
your ear
shame.
off. I apologize again for being so late. I know you recorded it and they get posted on your site, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
I'll
So
get
I
this one
will.
updated tomorrow, and this part wasn't recorded, but the first part was, and really it was a pretty light agenda, mostly just kind of reminders of things. The
Okay.
offensive place names webinar and our Google form for tracking things, and so there's you didn't miss anything huge.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Next time, I guess put it in bold for people like me who think it's at 6:30 and then show up at 6:40.
I have that problem because although I think now we're both at 6, but the global fellowship had been at 6:30, and I kept getting
Okay.
the 2 times confused. I'm easily
Yeah.
confused, Yuko, as it turns out.
No, I am more than easily confused. I have these things by hours, sir. It's been bad. Okay. Well, I will get the Google form is linked in your
In the
where was it?
slides, yeah,
In the slides. Okay.
it's in the slides.
Okay. All right. I'm going to let you go. Have a good evening. Thank you so much.
You too. It's not even 7:30 yet. It's all within the appointed time. Have good
Yeah,
holidays.
you too. I'll
Enjoy
see
your
you later.
unstructured time. Bye.
I will. Bye.